Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Let's Draw. In this episode, we'll be focusing on using light to control the focal point of an image. As usual, I start with a basic skeleton sketch to mark the approximate shapes of the composition, then begin creating a cleaner line sketch on a new layer on top. I work quickly with the basic skeleton, then slow down a bit as I create the more detailed sketch above it. At this stage, you'll want to work as quickly as you can while still maintaining proper anatomy. Don't hesitate to use reference. Erase and redraw anything that doesn't seem to work, and flip the canvas often to make sure there aren't any distortions in your line work. The sketch is the foundation your painting will stand on, so work carefully and deliberately, but don't let yourself get nervous or so focused that you get stuck. One thing I like to do is create separate layers for anything that will overlap something else. For this image, I created a new layer for hair and a new layer for clothing. By doing this, I could work on the hair or the clothing without having to worry about losing the anatomy I've already drawn. Of course, the more layers you have, the larger the file size and the more complicated the image becomes to work with, so don't go crazy with it. The largest number of layers I've ever personally used at this stage is 7, but less is nearly always better. When drawing folds in clothes, like Yuko's jacket on the left here, keep in mind how thick the material is, as that will directly affect the sharpness of the folds. Thin materials like her shirt will crease sharply, but the folds won't rise very high. Thick materials like the jacket are the opposite, and the folds will be very large. That means they'll be painted differently, but even in the sketch you'll need to make the fold indications large enough on the jacket. As I complete part of the sketch, I erase the portions I no longer need to keep the image from becoming confusing. If you wanted to keep these parts instead, you could add a layer mask to the layer and make those portions invisible by painting those areas black in the mask. When I'm selecting colors to fill in the sketch, I always start with the general environment color, and every color I choose after that is tinted with it. This is because in the real world, light falling on an object isn't pure white. Anything in the world that receives light reflects some of it, so the average color of the general light falling on an object is a combination of everything around it. People who are new to digital art often make the mistake of using pure colors at this stage of a painting, and the end result is something that looks very cartoonish and loud. Tinting colors with the environment is one way to prevent that. On a new layer set to screen mode, I add in the light that will highlight the focal area. I break it into 3 stripes of light to add visual interest, suggesting that it's coming from a window with blinds or through a vent somewhere. To further push the focus of the image and lead the viewer toward the center, I decide to add wall lockers to the background. This scene would likely happen in Honnouji Academy after all. The vertical lines will act as a visual boundary and frame the point of interest. This is part of the same technique Stanley Kubrick used in the hallway scene of The Shining. I create a new layer set to normal mode and use a large, soft edge brush to add in the deep shadowed areas. Because it's a separate layer, I can use the eraser to cut away parts of the shadow shape that don't belong, so I can be a little sloppy and fast without worry. Keep in mind that shadows aren't black. I sample the base color of the area and lower the value and saturation for use in the shadow shapes. Now we have all the elements of the final image in place, and we're ready to begin rendering. Rendering is a stage that has the least massive impact, but if not done properly, can completely ruin a painting. In my experience, rendering takes the longest out of all steps, but it's also the least mentally challenging. The most basic way to summarize rendering is as the step where detail is added and errors are corrected. It's a difficult word to express succinctly, but here you can see the image before rendering and after. On the left is the image before, and on the right is the image after. Once you've finished the rendering step, adjust the colors and levels as necessary, and you're done.